Welcome to today's deep dive into one of the most complex financial and legal stories in American politics. I'm your host, and this is a special investigation examining the financial challenges facing former President Donald Trump. Before we begin, if you appreciate balanced, fact-based analysis, please subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments below. This is a story that touches on business, law, politics, and the American justice system itself. Donald Trump has been a figure in American public life for over 4 decades. From real estate developer to reality television star to President of the United States, his career has been marked by both spectacular successes and notable failures. Today, we examine the current state of his financial empire, the legal judgments against him, and what they mean for his political future. This analysis draws on court records, financial disclosures, expert testimony, and reporting from across the political spectrum. The question before us is not simple. Is Trump facing genuine financial distress? Or is this another chapter in a lifetime of financial brinkmanship? We'll examine the evidence, hear from experts on both sides, and let you draw your own conclusions. What we know for certain is that Trump faces significant legal judgments totaling hundreds of millions of dollars. What remains uncertain is his ability to pay them and the broader implications for American politics. In February 2024, Judge Arthur Engoron issued a ruling in the New York civil fraud case brought by Attorney General Letitia James. The judgment was substantial, initially totaling over $450 million, including interest. The case centered on allegations that Trump and his organization systematically inflated the value of assets on financial statements provided to banks and insurers. The judge found that Trump had overvalued properties, including his Trump Tower penthouse, claiming it was nearly 3 times its actual size. Mar-a-Lago was valued at over $700 million on some statements, while the judge noted its assessed value for tax purposes was far lower. 7 Springs Estate, 40 Wall Street, and various other properties were similarly disputed. Trump's defense argued that banks performed their own due diligence, that no one was harmed because loans were repaid, and that valuation is often subjective in real estate. His legal team contended that sophisticated financial institutions don't simply accept client valuations at face value. They pointed out that Deutsche Bank and other lenders had their own appraisers and risk assessment teams. The prosecution countered that fraudulent statements are illegal regardless of whether banks caught them, and that the practice gave Trump unfair advantages in securing favorable loan terms. Legal experts remain divided on whether this case represents clear-cut fraud or aggressive but common business practices in high-end real estate. The appeal process continues, with Trump's team arguing the judgment is excessive and politically motivated. Following the judgment, Trump faced a significant challenge, posting a bond to pause collection during his appeal. New York law typically requires defendants to post bonds equal to 110% of the judgment amount. For Trump, this meant securing roughly $500 million in liquid assets or collateral acceptable to a bonding company. Trump's attorneys filed multiple motions arguing this requirement was excessive and effectively impossible to meet. They claimed that after approaching 30 bonding companies, none would accept real estate as collateral for a bond of this size. The companies reportedly required cash or securities that Trump claimed he couldn't liquidate without devastating his business operations. An appeals court ultimately reduced the bond requirement to $175 million, which Trump posted using a combination of cash and guarantees. This reduction was seen by Trump supporters as vindication of their argument that the original judgment was punitive. Critics argued it showed preferential treatment, noting that ordinary defendants rarely receive such accommodations. The question of Trump's actual liquidity remains contested. Financial disclosure forms from his presidency showed significant assets but also substantial debts. Real estate holdings are valuable but not easily converted to cash. Trump has historically leveraged properties heavily, meaning he may have limited equity despite high gross asset values. Separate from the fraud case, Trump faces judgments in 2 defamation cases brought by writer E. Jean Carroll. A jury awarded Carroll $5 million in one case and $83 million in another, finding that Trump defamed her by denying her sexual assault allegations and attacking her character. These judgments are also subject to appeal, but Trump has posted bonds to stay collection. The legal strategy here differs from the fraud case. Trump's team argues the damages are excessive and that his statements were protected opinion. They contend that public figures engaged in political discourse should have broader free speech protections. Carroll's attorneys argue that Trump's continued statements about their client, even during the trial, demonstrated a pattern of defamation that justified substantial damages. The jury appeared to agree, particularly regarding the larger award. Legal observers note that defamation cases involving public figures typically require proving actual malice, a high bar that the jury apparently found was met. The financial impact of these cases, combined with the fraud judgment, creates a significant burden. Trump's critics point to this as evidence of financial vulnerability. His supporters note that wealthy individuals often face large judgments and manage them through appeals and negotiated settlements. The ultimate resolution may not match the initial judgment amounts. Understanding Trump's financial position requires examining both assets and liabilities. Public records and financial disclosures provide some insight, though the complete picture remains unclear. Trump has never released detailed tax returns covering his entire business empire, making independent verification difficult. What we know from court filings and disclosure forms is that Trump carries substantial debt. Loans on properties, including Trump Tower, 40 Wall Street, and various golf courses, total hundreds of millions of dollars. Some loans have come due in recent years, requiring refinancing. Deutsche Bank, once Trump's primary lender, has reportedly stopped doing new business with him. Trump's defenders argue that debt is normal in real estate development. Leverage allows developers to control more property and amplify returns. They point out that many successful real estate investors carry high debt loads relative to net worth. As long as properties generate sufficient income to service debt, the model works. Critics counter that Trump's debt levels, combined with declining revenue at some properties and new legal judgments, create genuine solvency questions. They note that some Trump properties have seen reduced bookings and revenue. The Trump brand, once valuable, may have become polarizing in ways that affect business performance. The question is whether cash flow can support both existing debt service and new legal obligations. Trump's political fundraising operation has been prolific, raising hundreds of millions of dollars since leaving office. However, a significant portion of this money has gone toward legal expenses. Multiple PACs and campaign committees have paid tens of millions to law firms representing Trump in various criminal and civil cases. This arrangement has drawn scrutiny from campaign finance experts. Some argue that using donor money for personal legal bills, even if technically legal, represents a form of self-dealing. Donors who believe they're supporting Trump's political campaigns may not realize their contributions are funding defense attorneys. Trump's team counters that the legal cases are politically motivated attacks designed to drain his resources and distract from his campaign. They argue that defending against what they characterize as lawfare is indeed a political expense. Many donors, they note, specifically want to support Trump against what they see as unjust persecution. The Republican National Committee's finances have also become part of this story. After Trump's daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, joined the RNC leadership, the committee reportedly shifted some funds toward legal expenses. This has created tension within the party, with some Republicans concerned that money needed for down-ballot races is being diverted. Others see support for Trump as the party's top priority, given his position as the presumptive nominee. The Trump Organization's business performance has fluctuated significantly in recent years. Some properties have thrived while others have struggled. The pandemic affected hospitality and golf businesses industry-wide, but Trump properties faced additional challenges related to his presidency and its aftermath. Trump's golf courses have shown mixed results. Some, like the Scottish and Irish properties, have reportedly lost money consistently. Others, particularly those hosting major tournaments, have performed better. The loss of PGA events at Trump properties following January 6th represented a significant blow to both revenue and prestige. Trump hotels have similarly varied. The Washington, D.C. hotel, sold in 2022, never achieved projected profitability. The Trump International Hotel Las Vegas and Trump Tower units have maintained value in some cases. Licensing deals, once a major revenue source, have declined as some partners have ended relationships with the Trump brand. Supporters point out that Trump still owns valuable properties in prime locations. Real estate in New York, Florida, and other markets has appreciated significantly. Even if some businesses underperform operationally, the underlying land and buildings retain substantial value. Trump could theoretically liquidate assets to meet obligations if necessary. Critics note that forced sales rarely achieve full market value. If Trump must sell properties quickly to satisfy judgments, he may receive less than optimal prices. Additionally, some properties carry debt that would need to be satisfied before Trump could access equity. The question is whether Trump can weather the current challenges without having to sell crown jewel properties. Some analysts have raised concerns about potential national security implications of Trump's financial situation. The theory is that a candidate facing severe financial pressure could be vulnerable to foreign influence or compromised decision making. This argument has been made by some Democratic politicians and former intelligence officials. The concern centers on the possibility that foreign governments or entities might offer financial lifelines in exchange for policy considerations. Trump's past business dealings with entities in countries including Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Azerbaijan have been scrutinized. His son in law, Jared Kushner's investment fund, which received significant Saudi backing, has also drawn attention. Trump's defenders dismiss these concerns as speculation and fear mongering. They note that Trump was already wealthy before his presidency and didn't enrich himself while in office, citing his decision to donate his presidential salary. They argue that Biden family business dealings present far greater conflicts of interest and foreign influence concerns. Security clearance processes typically examine financial distress as a potential vulnerability. However, presidents and presidential candidates don't undergo the same clearance procedures as other government employees. The Constitution sets minimal qualifications for the presidency, and financial status is not among them. Voters ultimately decide what financial situation they consider acceptable in a president. Presidential candidate finances have been scrutinized throughout American history, though disclosure requirements have evolved. Prior to modern financial disclosure laws, candidates' wealth was often more presumed than documented. The post-Watergate reforms created expectations for transparency that continue today. Harry Truman was nearly broke when he left office, having refused to capitalize on his presidency through corporate boards or paid speeches. Jimmy Carter placed his peanut farm in a blind trust and returned to modest circumstances after his term. Both are remembered as models of financial propriety, though neither faced significant financial challenges before their presidencies. More recent presidents have been wealthier. The Clintons earned substantial sums from speeches and books after leaving office. The Obamas signed lucrative media and publishing deals. George W. Bush came from a wealthy family and owned a baseball team. None faced questions about insolvency or financial distress. Trump represents something different, a businessman who built his identity around wealth entering politics, then facing major financial judgments. The closest historical parallel might be Ulysses S. Grant, who went bankrupt after his presidency through a fraudulent investment scheme. Grant spent his final days racing to complete his memoirs to provide for his family. The comparison is imperfect, but it illustrates that even celebrated figures can face financial ruin. Trump's legal strategy relies heavily on appeals, which can take months or years to resolve. The New York fraud case will likely wind through the appellate courts well into 2025 or beyond. The Carroll defamation cases face similar timelines. During appeals, bonds stay collection, giving Trump breathing room. The appeals process serves important functions in the justice system. It allows for review of potential errors, excessive damages, or problematic legal theories. Many judgments are reduced or overturned on appeal. Trump's attorneys have raised substantive arguments that appellate courts will seriously consider. However, appeals also serve as a delay tactic in some cases. By extending timelines, defendants can pressure plaintiffs to accept reduced settlements or simply wait out financial pressures. Critics argue Trump is using the appeals process not to seek justice, but to avoid payment. His history of litigation includes many cases where appeals and delays ultimately led to reduced settlements. The question is whether Trump's appeals have merit or are merely procedural delay. His attorneys argue passionately that the judgments are excessive, politically motivated, and legally flawed. They cite specific precedents and constitutional concerns. Prosecutors and plaintiffs counter that the evidence was overwhelming and the judgments appropriate. Appellate courts will decide. Trump's financial challenges occur as he campaigns for president. Polling has been mixed on whether voters care about his legal problems. Some surveys show the cases actually strengthen his support among Republicans who see them as political persecution. Other polls suggest independent voters are concerned. The financial dimension may resonate differently than criminal charges. Most Americans don't face criminal prosecution, but many struggle with debt and financial stress. If Trump is portrayed successfully as financially reckless or insolvent, it could undermine his businessman image that attracted voters in 2016. Democrats are attempting to make Trump's finances a campaign issue. President Biden's campaign has highlighted the judgments and raised questions about Trump's business acumen. They argue that someone who allegedly committed fraud and faces financial chaos shouldn't be trusted with the economy. Republicans largely stand by Trump, arguing that the cases are politically motivated and that his business record, including job creation and economic growth during his presidency, speaks for itself. They point to economic indicators from Trump's term as evidence of competence. The financial cases, they argue, are distractions from real issues. Financial experts offer varying assessments of Trump's actual financial condition. Some analysts believe Trump faces genuine liquidity problems. They point to the difficulty he reportedly had securing bonds, the reduced business revenue at some properties, and the magnitude of the judgments. Real estate professor and author Jonathan Miller has noted that Trump's properties, while valuable, are highly leveraged and not easily liquidated. Converting real estate to cash in the amounts needed to satisfy judgments would require significant time or accepting discounted prices. This creates what Miller calls a liquidity trap. Other experts are more skeptical of claims that Trump is nearly broke. Forbes estimates Trump's net worth at approximately $2.6 billion, though this is substantially lower than Trump's own estimates. Even accounting for debts and judgments, these analysts argue Trump retains substantial equity in valuable properties. Business professor and turnaround specialist believes Trump has options including refinancing, selling non-core assets, or negotiating settlements. Trump has successfully navigated financial challenges before, including corporate bankruptcies in the 1990s. His pattern has been to restructure, refinance, and ultimately survive financial stress. Trump's situation raises larger questions about the intersection of wealth, business, and politics. Should presidential candidates be required to meet certain financial standards? Should debt levels or business failures disqualify someone from office? Americans have traditionally been tolerant of candidates who experience business setbacks, viewing them as learning experiences. Some argue that financial transparency should be mandatory for presidential candidates. Trump broke with tradition by not releasing detailed tax returns, making independent assessment difficult. Legislation has been proposed to require disclosure, though it faces constitutional questions about adding requirements beyond those in the Constitution. Others contend that voters are capable of evaluating candidates' financial fitness without mandated disclosures. They note that the market of political competition provides incentives for opponents to expose financial problems. If Trump's finances are truly disastrous, opponents will make that case and voters will decide if they care. The reality is that American voters have elected presidents with various financial backgrounds. Some were wealthy, some were middle class, and some struggled financially. What matters to voters varies. Some prioritize business success, others distrust wealth, and many focus on policy positions regardless of personal finances. Several scenarios could unfold in the coming months. Trump could successfully appeal and have judgments reduced or overturned. He could negotiate settlements for lesser amounts. He could liquidate assets to pay judgments, or he could face enforcement actions, including liens on properties. The political calendar complicates matters. If Trump wins the presidency, questions about how judgments would be enforced against a sitting president would arise. Could New York seize properties owned by a sitting president? Legal experts disagree on whether presidential immunity would apply to civil judgments predating his term. If Trump loses the election, enforcement would likely proceed normally. Properties could be seized, assets liquidated, and the business empire significantly reduced. This would represent a dramatic fall for someone who built his identity around business success and wealth. A middle scenario involves ongoing legal battles that extend beyond the election, with Trump in office or out, continuing to fight judgments while managing a stressed financial situation. This seems most likely given the pace of appeals and complexity of enforcement against high-value properties. The story of Donald Trump's financial challenges is still being written. What we know is that he faces substantial legal judgments. What remains uncertain is his ability to satisfy them and the political consequences. This situation reflects broader tensions in American society about wealth, justice, accountability, and political power. Whether you see this as the consequences of fraud catching up to a con man or as political persecution of a successful businessman likely depends on your broader political views. The facts themselves are disputed, with different experts drawing different conclusions from the same evidence. What is clear is that this story matters. It touches on fundamental questions about the rule of law, about what standards we hold leaders to, and about how justice should function in a democracy. These are questions each voter must answer for themselves. If you found this analysis helpful, please subscribe to this channel for more balanced, fact-based investigations into the important stories shaping our world. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe Trump faces genuine financial distress, or is this overblown? What should voters consider when evaluating a candidate's business record? These are questions worth discussing as we approach another consequential election. The story continues, and we'll continue following it wherever the facts lead. Thank you for watching.